Hello everyone. In this video, I want to talk about the concept of assets as they relate to architectural renderings. And we'll jump into the computer here in a moment like I usually do. But I just want to talk about the concept of assets. What is it? What are its benefits? What are its drawbacks before I jump in and show some demonstrations? Essentially, an asset in this case is anything that you have access to that can help simplify the modeling or rendering or post-processing process. Uh, so for that, I mean things like you've modeled something in SketchUp, and let's say you're doing a bathroom and you need to put in a toilet. Well, you don't need to model a toilet. Toilets could take some time to model. Instead, you get that from an online source, perhaps the manufacturer. Oftentimes, manufacturers will 3D model their components, so you can use them in SketchUp or you can use them in Revit or whatever the case might be. Those are what I mean by assets. It doesn't just have to be technical like a toilet, though, which is a great help. It could be something for a drawing. It could be like, oh, here's a picture of trees you can use. Or here's even building components. You want to model something like a castle. Here's a bunch of castle components, put them together to make the castle you want. Um, so really anything that you get from someone else that you use in your drawings is what an asset is. And they do exist at all stages from modeling to rendering. So all like your materials for your rendering, those are all assets that they come with, and you can use what's given or you can make your own. So obviously there's lots of positives to having assets, which is it makes your life easier. You can draw more quickly. Oh yeah, let me grab this, let me grab that. And with today's internet, there's tons and tons of choices out there. And so you should use assets. That said, there are a couple downsides as well to using assets. First is you want to make your drawings your own, your designs are your own. And if everyone's using the same assets and sort of all the work, it sort of becomes unified. It no longer is yours. I mean, yes, assets are often a minor part, but if everyone's using the same person, the same scale figure in their drawings, let's say, it gets a little boring. Do something different. So you don't want to get trapped in what other people have done for you. So that's sort of the first downside. The second downside is sometimes you have to be careful about the file size and how they're doing it. And we'll talk a little about this quickly, even in SketchUp. But like if you're grabbing a toilet, maybe you're making a rendering. It doesn't need to be that great. You just need to have a toilet there. But toilets are complex curves. They can eat a lot of memory. Why have a complex toilet in a bathroom when you don't even show the interior bathroom in any rendering, right? So there could be some file issues with it. And then the other big one I find is sometimes like it is easy to grab assets, especially two-dimensional assets for pasting and collaging in with Photoshop. Yeah, it's a great tool, but ultimately when you're making renderings, you want to tell stories, right? And so you want to tell the story you want to tell, right? Not the story that someone else some time ago made an asset for. You know, uh, Again, I think this is especially true with scale figures. If you want to show, which is often the house I use, a vacation house that's in a rural setting, you need to show people who are in that setting, not some person with a suit. You might have to make your own asset, right? I think that's the ultimate story that I'm going to make here by the end of the presentation. I'm going to start this presentation by showing you, if you're not familiar, all the places you can actually grab these great things, and that is great, right? But by the end, I want to say, what might you decide to do to make your own assets? Because you can make your own assets, which essentially, I guess by definition, it's not an asset if you're making it yourself, but how you're using it, it sort of is. It's a component that you place in, right? And if you really want to make the drawing yourself, make it special and tell the story you want to make, you're going to want to also make some assets yourself. So don't be afraid to do that. Don't think, well, so much easier to grab something else, I got to do it. No, take the time and do it right. If you're going to make a great drawing, you might as well do it right, right? So let's jump into the computer and I'll show you the various places you can grab things.
Okay, so here we are in a SketchUp model of the house I often show in many of my demonstration videos. And I've used many different kinds of assets within this drawing just to begin the modeling. Um, and so the first and the most obvious ones to talk about are really anytime you're using materials, those are assets, and any kind of rendering software, even SketchUp tends to come with materials. And so if I pull up my tray here, of course, I've got materials over here in the sidebar. I can select something like landscaping, which is where I got the grass from. You can see that there. Or I can do stone. We see I've got some stone down in here. Um, let's see, what else do I have? Of course, cladding and siding. Probably could have started with that. You can see that siding there is that siding there. And I have other videos about how you can take a lot of these core materials in SketchUp and actually change their color and orientation right in here, which is very useful because you will find these materials limiting. So for example, this siding is, I think it's almost directly that cladding material without changing it, but the red siding is actually the same material, but in SketchUp at least it's easy to change the color, the orientation. You can see it's horizontal and the color. Again, I have videos on how to specifically do that, but you start with your basic assets. You can use them and manipulate them in here. Same with the brick and any of the other materials. I'll post other videos about what it means to have a material. There are other ways of customizing and making your own material. And I'll also talk about how to use Photoshop to really enhance it as well at the end of this. But materials are really your most basic asset that you can get. You can also download them. You go to Google. And here we go. You can type anything in, and you'll notice one of the keywords. I did stone, and I did seamless as the keyword here. And I'll go into another video about materials and how rendering engines really work. But seamless is key to make sure that it's tiled correctly. But there's, you can go to Google. It's another great place for assets. We'll see this a couple times in this video, or internet research. This is just stone. Look at all the options that are here. You could download these in any software, including SketchUp allows you to import them in. And there you go. So materials, your first main asset. Of course, SketchUp has another place for three-dimensional object assets, and I've got a few in here. So this fire pit, for example, I got from SketchUp Warehouse. Same with some of the furniture back in here. That's from SketchUp Warehouse. If you don't know what it is, I'd be a bit surprised, but that's okay. I have it pulled up. You can just go to 3dwarehouse.sketchup.com. These random things come up. This is, just by chance. I love these birds. They're so adorable, well modeled. I like the forms of those. But you can type anything in here. I don't know. I'll type in like car as an example. We saw a van there. You type in car and you're just gonna scroll through. There's tons and tons. I mean, there's so many here. That I need to go through. Like, look at these. That's interesting, and this is interesting. The hard part is, I think, with SketchUp that you have to be careful. Not the hard part, just the thing you want to pay attention to. There are several things. Let's take cars for an example. Students can go down the wrong path in several different ways in a car. So first of all, maybe they really they like, oh my gosh, yes, this like sports car. I need the sports car in my drawing. But again, is sports car right in the drawing you're doing? Sometimes it is, and yeah, go ahead and use it, but many times it's not. I think, young professionals and students still use cars that just don't belong in the drawing. Or here, the Batmobile. Yeah, they'll be like, "Ooh, this will be funny. I'll put the Batmobile in here." No, it's not funny. It's if it was for Batman, maybe, but you want to tell a story. That's how you make a good drawing. So it requires choosing the right car. The second thing with anything in SketchUp Warehouse, I mentioned this earlier, that you need to be careful of is the data. In cars, anything that's curvy will just add more data to it. And so this car, I haven't checked it, but it might be really big and it's going to slow down your modeling time. It's going to slow down your rendering. There's been many times where I have a student come up to me and say, my SketchUp model is not working. It's slow. It's lagging. And SketchUp likes to auto save every 15 minutes. It takes forever to save. I can't use it. That's why I don't have my homework done. Well, it's not SketchUp. Usually, I mean, it is SketchUp, but it's because you have too many components in there with too many data, too many curves. Usually there's too much data in there and it's slow down things that you've never seen. I've told this story probably in other videos. It's a true story. I was once working with a student who was having these same issues. I looked at their file size. It was huge. Come to find out, it was this toilet paper dispenser that had like this piece of toilet paper hanging down, flapping in the wind, that they downloaded for 3D Warehouse. That data, I forget what it was now. I looked at it, but we pulled it out. We looked at how much data there was, how much file size it was taken. We compared it to another student's work who just had a house that they were working on. They didn't add any components into it. It was just a house. And it was like 100 times larger in file size, that one toilet paper thing, than the rest of a whole house was, because this flapping toilet paper had such small, you know, polygons in it. It took up so much memory. And that's the thing, when you download from 3D Warehouse, they're not trying to be efficient usually because it's just sort of user generated. Someone's trying to make like a cool car, like this car, and that's going to take a lot of file size. But if that's not your goal in the architectural drawing you make, it's just not needed. I generally recommend don't download toilet paper in there. Because there is an easier way. Because the third point, the problem with 3D Warehouse is oftentimes there might be a better way of getting that in faster, looks better, and that is to just collage it into Photoshop. Like this car does look nice for a SketchUp car. It doesn't look as good as a picture of a real car, though. Even if I were to render it, it's probably not going to. Now, there are some issues with cars, I understand, in getting the right perspectives, and there are times for using models. But same with the toilet paper. Not that you're ever going to have a rendering with the toilet paper, but let's say that you did, perhaps an interior bathroom perspective. It'd be easier to just get a picture of a toilet paper, collage it in Photoshop, than take the time to search it, put it in, and have a big data hog in it, right? So, but it's okay. It is useful. You just have to be careful what you pull in from SketchUp Warehouse, and did I want to make Adirondack chairs? No, but I wanted them, right? So I found something that told a story. I wanted Adirondack chairs, right? And so I put them in. I looked at them. The file size wasn't too big, and from far away, zoomed in, it's not the perfect Adirondacks chair, but zoomed out as a secondary element works perfectly nicely. So go ahead and use it. Now, in this file, I actually have other 3D model assets. I have some Ncap assets. So in this class, we render with Ncap. Ncap comes with its own 3D assets as well. They're a little better because they're more professionally made. I think they provide some benefits to them. Like one is in this mode, you can see here, they're not necessarily data HODs. They sort of downsample the image and it's only fully realized in the rendering. So that helps a lot from the data size issue that you can get from SketchUp Warehouse. Plus, they render often a lot better. Like this tree will render out much nicer than most trees you find in SketchUp Warehouse because it's a really complex shape. And so I'm not going to get into how they do it, but they use all these techniques to keep it simple here in the model, but really well done in the 3D output rendering. And you get to them right here. I have other videos specifically how to use it, but you click the video here. And again, this is not just true for Enscape, but any of these add-on software. And Enscape also works in more than just SketchUp, I should mention. It'll be pretty similar in anything you do, but you can search whatever you want. I don't know. I'll put tree in since I sort of talked about the tree. And it loads up. I don't know why lampposts are coming up here. There we go. Click on there. There we go. We see the trees coming. It'll look really like these nice trees here. So they're a great benefit too. I totally use them when I'm rendering. The one downside of here is you don't have a lot of selections. Like I don't have a lot of trees here to use. And there are other ways of solving it, as we will see in this video. But they're great. They're great to use. They've got people. They've got place settings. I think and I like the Enscape stuff for like, oh, I'm going to set a little table. I haven't here, but let's say I was closer in here. I might want to put things, books, and a flower or something like that on this table. They got great little things for that. So that's some assets you can use. In that way. Those are the three-dimensional assets. Right, when we jump into the two-dimensional world, this is Photoshop, of course. It has that house in it in a setting. But there's lots of other two-dimensional assets I have here. So I have a collection of different types here. These trees back here, they're actually from Photoshop. You can go to filter, render, and trees, and there's different trees. You can see they're a little fake, but I do like them a lot because they actually have a lot of control there. You can pick by species, you can change the leaves around and do all these certain things and colors and stuff. So I do like the flexibility there. I also have trees that were copied from Google, which I'll show in a second. Google Images, I should say. Those are some things. I have people here. In this image, I happen to silhouette the people. These cutout of these figures. I have a dog as well. But again, they started as 2D images. So you can grab some assets from Photoshop, has a few like trees. But I think a really big way of doing it is people just go to Google Images. And they type in something like a man cutout, and you can select lots of things where people have already taken a photo of a guy. There's a white background, so it's totally easy to crop out in Photoshop and place and paste in. But I sort of have similar issues with this, was just like, okay, well, if you need this guy with a jacket and vest with his hand raised, you're good to go. And but you know what? If you need someone who actually feels like they belong in a house, it can be hard to find. Or again, it's like the right person. Like if you really have a story that you're telling in the drawing, you know, it can be hard to find the right people. It might be a good start. I mean, I think this is why the silhouette function often takes the form, and many renderings do the silhouette thing, is because I can hide the things I didn't quite like to tell the story. I think obviously there's other benefits of silhouette. It sort of draws the eye towards the architecture as well. But there is a part of me, and I've shown many renderings where I like to use real people, and it's because architecture is real, and I want to show how it's really experienced. And it can be tough finding the right people uh, through Google Images, and can take time. And I recommend you can do this. You can pull these ones that are really easy to pull out of the person. But I often find, you know what, you need to be specific in your search, and you're going to find something, and it's like, now this guy, he feels like maybe he belongs walking to my house, and this one's got some issues. I won't be able to use it because there's copyright issues. But I'm sure some of these you can get without copyright issues, but I'm going to have to take the time and cut it out myself in Photoshop. But you know what? It's worth the time to tell the story. And so, of course, it doesn't have to be a man. It could be anything. Um, Find a good photo of it and cut it out. That's usually the best way. Of course, trees are really difficult. Trees are difficult to cut out, but you might find that you need to do that. So if the asset isn't pre-made, ready to be cut out, it's okay. You can cut it out yourself if need be. That's what I would recommend doing. I tend to stay away from. I try to follow some copyright issues. A lot of people can allow you to modify their work. I stay away from drawings. Like if it's a drawing, I'm gonna cartoon. I wouldn't put in someone else's drawing. I wouldn't say, hey, look at this is something I'm gonna put in my drawing. If I'm gonna draw it, I'm gonna draw it myself, and I recommend that to be your case as well. So there's are some things you can do. Now I'm going to show you one more image here, which of course is this one. And I've shown how I completed it in other videos if you're interested in more of the detail. But I've done everything I've done there. So I've done 3D modeling of the house myself. I've got both Ncap Assets and SketchUp 3D warehouse assets in here. So these people and the furniture and stuff, that's all from Ncap. This little bear head, I know I purposely fuzzed it out a little bit, but this bear head, and I think this canoe, that is from SketchUp Warehouse. They had something. I did modify some of these things a little bit, but I generally use them as is. Some of the materials in here, this back wall and things, are just the standard materials from SketchUp. I put bump maps on things and whatnot as well, of course. But there's a lot of assets in here that I created myself, right? So ultimately, I do feel like if you're going to create a drawing that is uniquely your own and it tells a story that you really want to tell, you're going to have to move beyond the assets you can get from other people and just make them yourself. So I want to talk about some of those assets I have here in this image. The trees trunks, for example. Those I drew in Illustrator. I like Illustrator because it gives you a lot of control over what you can draw. So I drew this tree trunk in Illustrator, that imported it into Photoshop to use it. Now you'll see in the video I did things like tweaking of color and shading and all that stuff in Photoshop, which is perfectly fine. That's how I do. All my assets need to be tweaked that way, right? So all these trunks were drawn in Illustrator, and I have a video. If you're interested in drawing that, you can check out the details. It's a little complicated, but once you have it done, it's a great tool to use. Similarly, the leaves on this tree, those are actually a photo. I started with a Photoshop paintbrush because there is a leaf one in Photoshop that takes minimal tweaking to use well. But I also made my own paintbrushes to add to the trees because just to give a little more richness, there's 3 or 4 different leaf paintbrushes that I made and painted on here. So those are sort of assets I made myself. Some other really big ones to note is materials. I have this wood siding and this stone wall were things I made myself. Now I did not use them through the SketchUp and Ncap material editor. I could have made tiles and made bump maps and done all these things. These are actually all made, they're made in Illustrator. The texture itself is made in Illustrator to control the line work, just like the trees. But again, it's applied sort of in Photoshop with a lot of control in Photoshop as well. So that's how this stone is made. It's actually just an Illustrator drawing that I made from scratch. Didn't have to be. I could have done it otherwise. I just happened to do it this way. And the same with the wood siding. All right. So material assets, make your own. Once you get good at it, it's not too hard. There's some other little things here, like this grass knoll here. I actually just had a photograph. I like to take photographs of a lot of things more and more. I don't have a lot, but my library's growing, and I encourage everyone out there to just, when they see something interesting, a little hill, a tree that they love, a sky. I don't have a sky in this one. Um, can talk about that really quick. Take a picture of it, and then you have it for your records, and you can use it. People, things like that. Then you also know you have copyrights to it as well. So don't be afraid of taking your own pictures to make your assets. Don't be afraid of drawing things in SketchUp to make your own assets. Don't be afraid of drawing things in Illustrator or Photoshop to make your own assets, because only when you make your own will you be able to tell the story. Of course, use balance. Like, if something's going to be blurred out and in the distance, you might not need to make it yourself. It might not be. Anyway, that's what assets are. That's what their benefits are. It can really help make your drawing when you know all the sources that are available to you. They can make it easier and more fun, but also you have to know their limitations and know when it's time to say, you know what, I'm just going to draw it myself. So keep making great drawings, everyone. Thanks for watching.